Bear down, fam. The clock is ticking down to the most brutal roster cut of the year, and the Bears' secondary is on fire at the worst possible time. Joey Porter Jr., Pittsburgh's elite corner, entered the conversation thanks to Ian Rapoport, and in a minute I'll tell you if Ryan Poles can actually pull that move off before Sunday. While the roster clock keeps running, Roger Goodell stepped straight into the stadium war, and what he said could shift Illinois' whole fate. And just when you thought you'd seen it all, Xavier Woods put Wandale Robinson straight into the concussion protocol during the joint practice against the Titans. Hollis Hall doesn't get a second of peace. Bear down. Let's get into it. Let's sort this mess out from the top, because there are way too many pieces moving at once, and I need you to understand the real scale of what is happening at that position. Let's start with what we already knew. Kobe Bryant, the starting safety, tore up his knee and is going to be out somewhere between 4 and 6 months. In calendar terms, that basically wipes out a huge chunk of the regular season. With just that alone, Chicago's secondary was already walking into August with a serious crack in it. Then there's Kyler Gordon. And here, fam, I have to be honest about what I am seeing because this stopped being a simple injury a while ago. Gordon signed a 3-year, $40 million extension in April of 2025, at the time the richest contract in the league for a nickel corner. And since he signed that check, we have basically never seen him healthy again. In 2025, he played in only 3 games, 117 snaps for the entire season, in and out of the injury list with groin, hamstring, and calf issues. He missed 14 regular season games. And now, in 2026, he missed every single OTA, entered training camp on the PUP list, and to this day has not practiced once. Ben Johnson, when he was asked about Gordon this week, said this word for word, "There's nothing to add right now. Yep, there's a plan, and he's working towards that plan." Listen to that tone. That is not a coach warmly protecting his player. That is a coach who does not feel like talking about this in public anymore. And Ryan Poles was even more direct. Obviously, he's frustrated. We're frustrated. When the general manager publicly says he is frustrated with a player he just paid $40 million, there's a bigger story there than a simple groin injury. Brad Biggs of the Chicago Tribune wrote something that sums up perfectly what most of the fan base is quietly thinking. He questioned whether Gordon's commitment to getting back on the field has been at an appropriate level, and he compared it to Ozzy Trapilo, who tore his patellar tendon, one of the worst injuries there is, and came back to play in 7 months. Gordon has gone months without any injury of that magnitude being reported, and he still has not shown up. I am not saying Gordon does not want to play. I am saying the organization, through its silence and its careful word choices, is sending a very clear signal that they have asked themselves that same question behind closed doors. And then Thursday happened. Joint practice against the Titans, the last big test before the roster cuts. And instead of adding good news, Chicago's secondary added 2 more scares. Jalen Johnson hurt his right arm during an 11-on-11 drill on a run play. He went to the sideline to get checked out, came back without his helmet, and stood there cheering his teammates on. A sign that it is not serious, but still, we are talking about the best cornerback on the roster walking off during cut week. And on the other side of the field, Tariq Stevenson collided with the Titans' Carnell Tate and left favoring his right leg, walking off with head trainer Andre Tucker. He also returned to practice afterward. Neither injury looks serious based on everything reported so far, but put it all together. Bryant out for months, Gordon without a single practice all of 2026, and now both starting cornerbacks banged up on the same afternoon. That is not accumulated bad luck. That is an entire position group screaming for help. And that is where the fantasy that has all of Chicago talking comes in. Joey Porter Jr. Let me explain who this kid is, because the name alone already creates hype, but the real analysis matters more than the last name. Porter Jr. is the son of Joey Porter, an absolute Pittsburgh legend, and he was a second-round pick, number 32 overall, back in 2023. He was named to the PFWA All-Rookie Team. Across his 3 seasons, he has racked up 165 tackles and 3 interceptions, and last season he played 894 snaps with a passer rating allowed of 56.2. To put that in perspective, that is a true shutdown corner number, not some role player's stat line. 11 passes defended, only 29 catches allowed all season. This is not a cheap fantasy name. This is an elite-level cornerback still playing on his rookie deal. And here is the key to this entire thing. Porter Jr. is in a contract standoff with Pittsburgh. His current deal is his rookie contract, barely $9.6 million guaranteed in total, a ridiculously low cap hit for what he is producing on the field. He wants an elite contract. He openly compared himself to Trent McDuffie of the Rams, who makes $31 million a year, the current ceiling for the position. One reporter, Mark Kabley, projected that Porter deserves something close to $116 million over 3 years. Pittsburgh, according to Ian Rapoport's reporting, is offering him something around $20 million a year. Both sides are, in Rapoport's own words, far apart on valuation. And Porter already made his public stance clear. He skipped participation in mandatory minicamp practices over this exact issue and said without holding back, "I feel like I've been an elite guy since I've been in this league." Now here comes my honest take, because I am not going to blow smoke at you. Is it a beautiful fantasy that Ryan Poles picks up the phone, calls Pittsburgh, and offers picks for Porter Jr.? Yes. Is it realistic? Being honest, not really. Teams do not trade away 23-year-old cornerbacks who are still on their rookie deals and have already proven to be elite, no matter how tense the contract standoff gets. Pittsburgh might be at war with Porter over the money, but that does not mean they are willing to hand him to a conference rival right before the season kicks off. Honestly, this is the kind of trade that generates clicks and views, and I love talking about it, but in real life, it has extremely low odds of happening before the season starts. What is more realistic, and this is what I want you to sit with, is the other name that came up in the same conversation, Christian Fulton of Kansas City. Fulton, a former second-round pick of the Titans, signed a 2-year, $20 million deal with the Chiefs, and Ryan Poles has a real track record of doing business with that front office. That is not a coincidence. It is a relationship built over years of shared work. If Kansas City decides Fulton is expendable given the depth they have at that position, that is a trade with far better odds of actually happening than any Porter Jr. fantasy. They also brought up Josh Newton of Cincinnati, a 5th-round pick by the Bengals in the 2024 draft with pick number 149, who, according to reports, is losing ground in the rotation. Funny enough, that started getting noticed right after their joint practices against Chicago. And finally, Reddy Stewart, who used to play for the Bears and is now fighting for a spot in Dallas's secondary, a name who could show up available on waivers if the Cowboys decide to cut him, no trade or draft picks required. Here's my stance, and I want it to be clear. I think Poles makes one move at that position before Sunday, but it is not going to be explosive. It is going to be surgical. A Christian Fulton, a waiver claim, something low cost that gives them real depth without touching their 2027 picks, which is exactly the capital this front office has been patiently stacking for the contention window with Caleb Williams. Porter Jr. is the story that makes you dream. Fulton is the story that is actually going to happen. And for a team that is a real contender this season, I will take a boring, effective move 1,000 times over an expensive gamble on a fantasy that probably will not even pick up the phone. Because while the secondary is on fire on the field, back in the offices, there's a $5 billion chess match being played. And this week, a piece move that we were not expecting. Commissioner Roger Goodell put himself directly in the middle of it. On Wednesday, Goodell confirmed that he and his office recently met with Illinois officials to talk about the stadium. And he said, word for word, "We want to make sure that Arlington Heights and Illinois have an opportunity, and Indiana as well, to put their best foot forward." And he added something that, honestly, is about as diplomatic a sentence as a commissioner can possibly give. I'm involved in a lot of stadium efforts. It's not unusual for me to be involved in conversations with either public officials or others. Now let's break this down with a clear head, because there are going to be people who grab that quote and scream that Illinois just saved the stadium. No, that is not what he said. What he said is textbook diplomacy. Both sides get their opportunity. That is exactly what a commissioner says when he wants to keep pressure on both parties without publicly committing to either one. If Goodell truly believed Indiana had already won this fight, he would not be spending his political time meeting with Illinois officials in August, weeks before the season starts. The fact that the meeting happened is real, verifiable information. The exact content of what he said, not so much. Let's quickly go over where we actually stand, because this story has months of development behind it, and I want everyone on the same page before we move on. Arlington Heights. The Bears own 326 acres of that property. For months, they pushed for a property tax break through pilot legislation, payments in lieu of taxes, that would give them the fiscal certainty they needed to finance the project through private banks. That legislation died in the 2026 spring session. And an alternative proposal to create a stadium financing authority at the Cook County level also died without even reaching a vote in the House. 2 attempts, 2 failures in the same legislative session. On the other side, Hammond, Indiana, has 2 sites currently under study. The Bears have committed $2 billion toward the development, and the franchise's board of directors voted in early June of 2026 to prioritize that option over Illinois. That is not a beat reporter rumor. That is a formal documented board decision. And yet, and this is what I find the most interesting part of the entire story, Bears leadership, with Kevin Warren as president and George McCaskey as chairman, still has not ruled out Illinois completely, not even as of mid-August. That tells me something concrete. If Indiana were fully closed and decided, there would be no reason for Goodell to spend a single-minute meeting with Illinois this week. The franchise is still leaving the door open, even if it is only cracked. Here is my personal read, and I want to be clear, this is an opinion, not a confirmed fact. I think this Goodell visit is more symptom than cause. The NFL as a league prefers its historic franchises to stay in their original markets. That is good for the brand, for the narrative, for the television broadcast that airs every Sunday. But the league is not going to force anything either. If Illinois cannot give the Bears the fiscal certainty a bank needs to lend them the money, no handshake from Goodell changes that math. The ball, literally and figuratively, is still in Springfield's court, not in Park Avenue's. What I do want to leave you with is this. There is no public timeline for when the Bears have to make a final, definitive decision. That means this story is going to keep moving, week by week, probably well into the regular season. So if you are waiting for a clean resolution and a clear answer, that moment has not arrived yet. But at least this week, for the first time in a long time, Illinois has a seat back at the table. Remember that joint practice against the Titans we talked about at the top? The one that banged up Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson? Well, fam, that same afternoon was also the stage for the most talked about fight of the entire training camp. And this one, unlike the secondary crisis, honestly made me smile. Here is what happened. Wan'Dale Robinson, the Titans wide receiver who signed a 4-year, $70 million deal with Tennessee this offseason, caught a ball over the middle of the field. And that is when Xavier Woods showed up, the Bears' safety. Funny detail, Woods played for the Titans last season, so this had an extra flavor of, I know exactly where it hurts. He hit him with what reports described as a crushing blast. Robinson went down hard, had to be evaluated for a concussion, though he walked off the field on his own power. The chaos started immediately. Titans offensive linemen Austin Schlottman and Peter Skoronski went straight after Woods, and that turned into a shoving match between multiple players from both teams, the classic swarm of helmets and pushing you see at every August joint practice. Except this time, the rivalry was real, not manufactured for the cameras. Titans head coach Robert Saleh did not hold back. He called the hit cheap, straight up dirty. And Peter Skoronski was even sharper with his words. That's teach tape 1. 01 in terms of what not to do in a thud practice, he said, adding that hits like that aren't necessary. Now, here's my honest opinion on this, because I know half of you are going to agree with me and the other half is going to want to fight me in the comments. I get Tennessee's complaint, seriously. Thud joint practices exist specifically so teams can compete physically without the risk of a full-speed, full-contact injury. And if Woods really did come in with everything he had in a situation where the rule is wrap up, do not finish through the guy, that complaint has real technical merit. It is not just a hurt rival being dramatic. But keep it a buck with me for a second here. This is football. This is exactly the kind of intensity that later, in October and November, separates the teams that compete from the ones just watching from the sideline. Ben Johnson has spent the entire camp asking for a physical identity, a defense that demands respect, that makes the other team think twice before coming over the middle. And honestly, watching a Bears player put fear into somebody, even in a preseason practice against a team we do not even play in the regular season, gives me a feeling I have not had with this defense in a long time. Yeah, I know, that is a little contradictory with everything I just said about Kyler Gordon 10 minutes ago. But that is what being a fan is. Y'all don't understand. You want your own guys handled with care when they are hurt. At the same time, you want the other team's receiver's soul ripped out of his chest. Both things live in the same brain. No guilt required. The truth is, Robinson walked off under his own power. There are no reports of a serious injury beyond the routine concussion evaluation. And in 2 weeks, nobody is going to remember this fight except us. The ones who spend our lives breaking down every second of every August practice like it is the Super Bowl. But for the intensity meter on this team heading into the real season, this counts. And it counts for a lot. And that is everything I've got for you today, fam. A week with mixed flavors like almost every August. The secondary is on fire, Kyler Gordon is still a massive question mark, and the Joey Porter Jr. fantasy is probably staying a fantasy. But keep an eye on Christian Fulton because that one could actually happen before Sunday. The stadium is still a war with no clear ending, but at least this week Illinois got a seat back at the table, and that is already more than we had a month ago. And on the field, this defense is showing an edge that, honestly, has me excited in a way I have not felt in a while. Bear down. Always. If this video gave you something, drop a like, subscribe, and tell me down below, do you trade 2027 picks for the Joey Porter Jr. fantasy, or do you take the boring, safe move with Christian Fulton? I want to read every single answer. See you in the next one.